Hello. Another Saturday evening is upon us, as they would say. So hopefully I have better audio this week because I went and bought a mic. So a shotgun mic because I'm tired of audio problems. So what's a little bit of money, right? If everybody wants to comment wherever they are on YouTube or Facebook, so I kind of know who's here. I always like to know who's here. Feels like I'm just talking to dead space. I don't know anybody who's here. Hey, Pamela. Oh, good. Audio sounds awesome. Perfect. I went cheap. I was going to get a Rode mic, and then Best Buy was out of Rode mic, so I bought some weird Boya brand, whatever the hell that is. But it works, so that is wonderful that the audio sounds great, because I'm tired of dealing with technology issues. So... oh, if anybody else wants to comment here, I gotta see we got 4 of us this evening so far. I know Pamela's here, obviously. And then whomever else, so that I know. And just like I said, I'm not talking to dead air. So, hey, Paul from Facebook. Awesome. I think everybody comes from Facebook. Yeah, okay. I didn't see my YouTube button lit up there either, but I don't think anybody ever joins us from YouTube, but that's fine. Because all this goes and links over to YouTube later on. So, I will give it a few more minutes. Actually, a little early this evening, so I started it sooner than I had planned, but oh well. So tonight we're just going to talk about kind of like 5 things I do when I set up my camera here momentarily. So if you have any questions or you're thinking about questions on how to set your camera up, throw them over in the comments on wherever you're at, Facebook or YouTube, and I will answer those quickly or as I kind of go through. So I know it might be easier once we kind of get rolling, but if you have anything, send them my way. We'll give it 1 more minute. Hopefully everybody is having a wonderful Saturday night or a wonderful, weekend. I don't know if all of you woke up to snow, but I did, so that was not my plan. So sorry, I thought I had a visitor, but I did not. But yes, I was not planning on snow this morning. So I was working on what I call my DARPA project. If anybody's familiar with DARPA, that's the Defense Department super secret black budget kind of thing. So I'm just going to call it my DARPA project from now on. But eventually I will release what it is once I get further down the path. But I had way too much coffee this morning. And if you're in Marion ever, hit up Uptown Coffee Company, I believe. It's actually pretty good. A little shop. And then if you love Donut Land Donuts, who doesn't? They carry Donut Land Donuts. So, but, oh, there's 3. So, you know what? I will get started here because it's 8 o'clock. So as questions arise, pop them in the comments and I will answer them as we go. So tonight we're going to talk about kind of like 5 things or just things in general I do, whether it's a brand new camera, even if it's a camera you've had for ages. I'm very muscle memory kind of driven person. So I think when I set up the camera, because like I really struggled. I used to at one point have 3 different cameras. I had a Nikon D2X or D2X, yes. A Nikon D300, and then I had one more. Oh, D7000. So they're all completely different camera bodies. So buttons in different spots. So once you kind of like get used to buttons and stuff, it's like, well, where are they at on camera to camera? So that was really hard. And then for a while I had 2 of the same bodies. So that was super easy. It's a muscle memory thing. Once you start finding out where your focusing button is, menus, all that, it's kind of pretty easy. But if you go from, say, I don't know, camera to camera, menus are probably going to stay the same for the most part and where they're at, but not always. So it's things like that. Like I get used to this process of where things are. As I'm photographing, I don't have to pull the camera away and look at it. When I jump to the 850, that is a super customizable camera. I love it. I have all this different customization. I don't do video at all. Very rarely if I do. So I've actually got my camera set where I think it's on right behind the shutter button is my video button. I can hit it and start recording video. Well, I don't do it. So what I changed it, because on one of the camera bodies I had previously, I did not have an ISO button. So I changed that to hit it. And actually when I would push that record button, it didn't start video. It changed my ISO. It would bring it up in the viewfinder. So I could hold it down and then spin my back dial with my thumb, change my ISO. So that was super nice. So it was things like that. If you're familiar with like depth of field preview, those are some things where you can kind of like preview your depth of field before you take an image. Kind of gives you kind of a lukewarm look of what it may look like. Some of those buttons, they're usually down, or on my D850 and my Z6 II, they're kind of down here right next to the lens if you're a Nikon person. I can actually customize those to change into 15,000 different things. I think I've got that set on the bottom one. Let me think. I have to almost do it like my head by feel. So yeah, so it's this bottom one because I use this finger. When I push that down, I can actually change my aspect ratio. So I go from square to DX mode to 16:9, things like that. So that's super nice too. So then I don't have to pull the camera down, find it in a menu, dig through menus and sub menus of menus. It gets annoying. You can't remember all of it. So it's one of those things that you can go in and change. So that's kind of like, let's touch on that. So number one, I will go in, well, actually that's down my, all right, let's talk about user settings. I love user settings. And what do I mean by user settings? So Nikon, Canon, Sony, a lot of them will have up somewhere on your camera, usually on the dial, like a U1, a U2, and a U3. So let's say you photograph eagles a lot and you photograph landscapes a lot. And you obviously have way different settings for those two scenarios when you're out photographing eagles versus landscapes, obviously. Your focusing modes are going to be different. Maybe you've got, I don't know, for some reason you shoot raw files for, I don't know, eagles and JPEG for landscape or whatever it may be. But what I like is you can set your camera up to like to the T what you want. So you can set your focusing mode. You can set, your color profiles, so landscape, vivid, all those kind of things. You can even set, I know on the Nikon, shutter speed and things like that. So you can kind of get everything set up, and then you assign these settings to certain user groups. So user 1, user 2, user 3. So obviously I do lots of landscape, so I always had that set to user 1. Or then user 2, I had all set up for sports. I had my continuous shooting mode set up. I had my ISO already kind of preset. I had autofocus set to autofocus continuous versus single, things like that. Things that I would only pretty much shoot for action and motion. So whether it was wildlife or football or basketball, because there would be times where I would cover multiple events at a time, or I might have been out shooting landscape yesterday and I didn't reset my camera to shoot sports tonight. So I could run up, get to the gym for basketball, throw on my 70 to 200 2.8, go to user 2 settings, U2, and camera was already preset. I had everything set up for sports and action. So then I didn't have to sit there, because there would be times where I used to go through before I had the capabilities of user 1, user 2, user 3. I would go in and I'd say, okay, got everything set. And then I'm like, darn it, I forgot something. I forgot. Usually it was autofocus mode. So I was set to autofocus single versus continuous. And guess what? The shot that I wanted was out of focus because I had focused 20 feet away down the court and I was firing rapid shots. And as they got closer, they were more and more out of focus because guess what? The camera would not refocus. So it's kind of a super... Tedford's camera star. Oh, Tom. That's not a comment. That's a comment. It's not a question. Why wouldn't we all? I would love to have a camera store, but nobody's going to fund it. The bank's definitely not going to fund it. I'll be laughed right out of the bank. But the user settings are super, super nice because you can preset, especially for newer people or newer newbie kind of photographers. Like, we can't remember everything. I don't care if you've been doing this 20 years. Sometimes you're going to remember, sometimes you're not. Depends on the day. So you can set your top 2, 3, depending on how many user settings you have, and set those up preset. And then you just go in, you click that dial to U2 as long as you remember what U2 is set for. So that's I do that on all my cameras. And again, being that muscle memory kind of person, U1 on my D7000 was the same as my D750. So as I progress through cameras, everything's set the same. So then I'm not sitting and struggling and being like, oh my God, U2 used to be for sports. Now it's U1. U1 was for landscapes. Now it's U3. I keep everything the same unless I really need to change up that process. Let's talk about, let's see, custom menus. What I mean about a custom menu is I know that Nikon will do it. I'm pretty sure Canon will. I have every one of my cameras set with custom menus, and that means things I change the most. So, like, let's say you format your card, which you should be all the time. Instead of going like my D850 is super nice. I have two buttons that say format. I can hold both those buttons down at the same time, and they will format. It will say, "You sure you want to format your card and wipe the card clean and do all this good stuff?" I can't hit yes. I actually have an OK button that I have to use, which is super nice. But on like my D750, I don't remember having those out of the top of my head, but I know for sure, like let's say ages ago, Nikon D70, that's like 2004 era, 2000, no, actually 2005, 2006, don't much matter. Didn't have those two buttons as far as I can remember. So I would format a card all the time. Well, it gets annoying to go in, hit menu, scroll through the menus, find the wrench, go over from the wrench menu to a sub menu, find format, then hit OK, go into the next screen. So do you want to format the card? Yes. So what I do is at the very bottom of my camera, I can go on my Nikon and say, okay, add these specific menus to my Nikon little menu. So it's my own set of menus. So sometimes most of the time it is, I know on my 850, I have it set to formatting because they do that all the time. The other one I have set is Wi-Fi, because I do a lot of Wi-Fi on occasion, or Bluetoothing from the camera to maybe the phone, or usually to my phone, to just get a quick image over somewhere. That's a pain in the keister, in my opinion. On a Nikon, you got to go a menu into a sub menu into a sub menu. So if I can cut half that work out by already putting the Wi-Fi in there, or the Bluetooth, like I hate these, the Bluetooth Wi-Fi will suck the battery life down. It's nuts. So especially if it's left on. So what I will do is after I'm done, I will shut it off. Well, instead of having to go back to the menu and remember where it's at, because I can never remember where it's at on mine, and I can go through, it's in my special little Justin's menu. So then I also have my aspect ratio. Like let's say for some reason I'm in the menus and I'm not on my little button on the front, I can go in and change my aspect ratio. So there's several things like that, or color profiles. If I switch between standard, landscape, vivid, or something, I don't use vivid, but that's another one. And I change that a lot. Or let's say maybe you go out and you change a lot your focusing modes. So a lot of things you can do in the back screen on like some menus there, but let's say your camera doesn't allow for a change there. You can set that up in that menu, and then you can go down, find it quicker, so you can hit your menu button, know it's the very last menu, so you just scroll up so it goes to the very bottom of the menus, and you've got everything you've set, select it, and go from there. It's super nice. It makes time and essentials of things like where you need to be there right now and not later, it's right there. Because sometimes, like, even use it for things you don't remember, like the Wi-Fi. I can never remember where it's at on the freaking camera. It's always in that menu. I'm trying to think what else I have set. Those are probably the top 3-ish, 4-ish that I have set on menus. Any questions so far on anything? No? Okay. But yeah, the custom menus is super nice because it's just one of those things that it's a quick access point. And know that the more money you spend in any camera, you'll start to get more of these customizable functions. I think almost every Nikon has a level of some form of customization at the menu level. It's been a long time since I've had Canon in my hands, but I know they do as you go up the line. But there's just so many things. Like you can even, like on the Nikon, there's like some of the buttons, like the video button. I can make it more than just video. I can make it ISO. I think I can make it a depth of field preview button. There's like a million things. So pull out your manual sometime and see if you have it, and just go in and dig, and you can add it and make your own set of menus. I think it makes life so much easier. Let's see. I don't want to get too far ahead here, but let's see. I kind of talked about custom buttons already, but let's talk about custom buttons. So that's just like, not every button on your camera is going to be customizable, really. Some things will be, like the ISO button or the depth of field preview button. I also have a function button on my, which is not this one, it'd be this button here, right on the side of the, or next to the lens on my D850. That's got 9-10 things I can customize. I don't even think I have anything set up on that. Some of the other buttons I'm trying to think that you could actually go and change. Oh, like let's say if you're on a Nikon, for sure, I think Canon you could do it, but on most Nikon upper end bodies, you have the back dial that changes shutter speed by your thumb, and the front one will change aperture. It may be vice versa for you, depending on the model. But my Nikons, I believe, if I remember right, I can go in and actually switch those. So I can make shutter speed on the front and then aperture on the back. I mean, if you really wanted to do that, you can, but once mine's set, it's just set. Sometimes I can't even remember what the button does because it's such a muscle memory thing for me that I just like, okay, shutter speed, I don't have to think about it. It's this one. And this one's aperture. And ISO is up front above right behind the shutter button. I'm still learning my Z6 II because I think if I remember right, looking at it, I have a dedicated ISO button. And then the video button is, if I reverse it in my head, it's to the left there. And I want to like go over and use that, and I don't have to because I have a dedicated ISO button, which is super nice. I don't know why they didn't do that ages and eons ago because we're always changing it, like shutter speed and aperture, so why not make a dedicated button to that? Trying to think some of the other things that you can set customizable within the buttons. Yeah, it'll come back to me later if I think of anything. Any questions so far on anything? No? Nothing? So I'm like through 3 of these already. I said I was going to have 5. Let's see. Let's jump into one of the other things I always have set on my camera. The non-fancy term that I call it, it's called blinkies. Or highlight warnings. So if you have highlight warnings, if you have any spot of your image while you're previewing it, it will flash black. So then you can see like, oh, I have a really blown out sky. Or sometimes it looks blown out on the screen. And on the Nikon, I have it set so as I'm scrolling through like on the Nikon, when you preview a photo, you can bring up that's another thing I can talk about too. We'll talk about that real quick is your preview settings. Like when I bring up on my Nikon, hit preview, I can hit that up button and the down button on the keypad on the back. I can scroll through different things. So a lot of the time the Nikons right out of the box, I think are set for like histogram. And then you can see all your camera settings on the bottom. I know on the Z6 II, I go into that setting to customize that preview menu and I can check or uncheck things. And the one thing that I really love on my 850 and the Z6 II is I can have the autofocus point, and I know Canon will do it too, is you can see and have that autofocus point preview over the image on the back of the screen. Because sometimes I'll ask people, they say, well, the nose is a little out of focus. And yes, you read my mind, B. I am going to touch on back button focus in a little bit. That's one of the 5. And they're like, the nose is slightly, out of focus, or their eyelashes in focus, but not the actual pupil of the eye. And I'm like, well, did you sure you focus right on the pupil? Oh, I know I did. I'm like, okay, that's good to know. So then that would lead me to, your lens, if you focused on the pupil and this bottom, eyelashes in focus, that's probably giving me an indication that your lens is front focusing. Well, then I go in and check and I go set their menu up and find out, nope, they didn't actually focus on the pupil of the eye. They focused on that bottom lash. So it makes sense. So I can preview my button or my, can't think of the term. The autofocus point, I can see where that is. So that helps me determine if I focused in the right area or if things just don't seem right. The other thing I've got set on mine too is when I scroll up, I can get more advanced metadata. So think of metadata, if you're not familiar with it, is like it's a recipe. It's like cooking. So people come and say, oh, Justin, I don't know what I did for settings wise on this photo. Yeah, we can put it in the computer over here, right click, info, that kind of stuff, but then not have that, all that information. But what if I want to see it right now, like in the camera? I can then go from there and check and look at it and say, okay, it's XYZ. I've got 5 or 6 things. Here's my shutter speed. Here's my aperture, my ISO. But I also can get it set up to see profiles, things like that, lens profiles, color profiles, more advanced metadata, which is super cool. So it's one of those things that you can go through and kind of check and just have more information. So then you've got within that the highlight warnings where I can see too much overexposure of the sky, things like that. So it's one of those things, and they will blink black and flash black, which is super cool because then I know that I've blown out that sky, or I've blown out the t-shirt in somebody's white t-shirt, or the highlight down the side of their face, because that's going to tell me, Justin, you have blown out your information, that there's nothing there. That is not retrievable. That cannot come back. You can't retrieve that information. So then I have, let's see. Let's talk about the last one. Wow, it's only 20 minutes, but I'll open it up for questions. Back button focus. Back button focus is, I love it. B asked about it. Some people hate it. This is a love-hate relationship. But I hate where I have my shutter button is the primary mode of focus. If I'm trying to follow a subject, around, I've got to have that button pressed halfway down. And sometimes, guess what? I accidentally trip the shutter and take a photo. And then I'm like, oh no. Then I got extra photos to clear out later. But then what happens is at that same time, I can have where my thumb is. I have either you have a dedicated, I know the D850 over here has a dedicated back button focus, or usually it's your auto exposure, auto lock button that you can pre-program to now be back button focus. So what I like about that is I have back button focus set where I can hold the button down and I can pan. I can lean over here and pan down here and pan. I'm looking for whatever, and I've got that autofocus point right on my subject. And when I have that, that allows me to then go in and just keep that autofocused and keep on going. I don't have to worry about the button halfway down. I've got it held down. It's focusing. It's tracking as long as I got that autofocus button on my subject. And then I can click and fire the shutter. So some people like it, some people don't, but I will tell you what happens is when you switch that you're going to want to focus up here and not to the back. So you have to watch that. So be very careful of that because you'll want to focus up here and oh my God, it's not focusing, only to find out, oh, I moved it back here. So it's one of those things. Any other questions so far? It's only been 20 minutes, but I kind of went through this kind of quick. Anything? Any questions? Let me see something here real quick. Nah, I was going to show you something, but customizable, but I don't have it there. So, any questions? No, nothing. I went through kind of quick tonight, but back button, custom buttons, highlight warnings, custom menus, user settings. Anything from anyone? Any questions? No. Well, I guess we'll just, wow, this is the quickest one ever. But those are kind of like 5 little things that I mostly set up on camera. Now, I'm not saying that's the only 5 things I set up and I'm done. But other than that, I have lots of other things I'm setting. Obviously, I always set my camera to RAW. There's a bonus tip, RAW photos. I like to shoot RAW because I edit everything. I don't do JPEG because I can't bring the files, push it as far enough as I want. So as soon as I get a brand new camera, that's the very first thing that I set and check is RAW files. But I don't always shoot, on my D850, I think it can do 40, it's 40 plus megapixels at this point. For me, I dummy it down to 24 megapixels RAW. That's all I need. I only bought the D850 to have high-res capability. I don't always use the high-res capability. Any other questions? No? Well, I guess I'll kind of wrap it up then quick tonight. Oh, boy. Ooh, Tom wants to know in a future live, Can I explain how to submit a picture to the state fair? I've never done it, to be honest. I've never entered the state fair. I don't do photo contests, but maybe that's something I could touch on. Yeah, Pamela says, I will get out my manual and learn to personalize menus. Yes. I mean, it doesn't hurt anything. You might as well shoot for it. Just remember as you make these changes, you got to, like up here, get them to remember your changes, because if not, you're going to forget. And then it's going to be like that muscle memory thing. You're like, you just have to retrain yourself. Let's see. So next week, we're going to talk about landscape essentials, just some landscape tips and tricks. So if you're going to join in, bring your questions for that. The other thing, yes, the podcast. I always forget about the podcast. So the new episode dropped on the 7th. It's called Finding Your Photographic Process. So that's kind of a fun one. I actually was going to do Finding Your Photographic Style, and I was struggling. I recorded that thing 3 times and I hated it. So I started over and changed it to Finding Your Photographic Process. So if nobody's got any final questions, I'm going to wrap this puppy up. So, but if you got any questions, per usual, you know where to find me. Find me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. Go over to the nextshotpodcast.com. Check out the podcast. Got any questions? Shoot them over that way too. So if not, have a wonderful evening. And as always, thank you for joining, and I always appreciate everybody's support. So again, if you got any follow-up questions of this, just shoot me a message, because I will probably be up tonight. So have a good evening, everybody.